bend, he refuses to crawl. And he's always at home with his back to the wall. And he's proud of the scars and the battles he's lost. And he struggles a bit as he hangs on his cross. And he likes to be known as the angry young man. Popular steadies and the king and the queen of the palm, riding around with the car top down.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the honor and privilege of having Mr. Wade Preston.
Are we on the air?
We are on the air.
God, look how fat I am.
Hey, I'm right there with you, buddy.
A lot of pasta invested into that puppy face.
You've heard me speak of Wade quite a bit here on Papa Bear Studios videos, and I'm so glad and privileged to be able to shake your hand and say welcome.
Oh, my pleasure.
And tell the audience a little bit about who you are, your background, what you got coming up, what you've done, what you're going to do. Let's start at the very beginning. Where did you grow up, and how'd you get started?
I was born a poor black child in Alabama. I'm from, oh God.
All I need is my B12 and this water.
And this chair.
And this oral analgesic. There's never been a script here at Papa Bear Studios.
A lot to be learned from people like Steve Martin. He's brilliant. I'm really tired. I'm from Massapequa Park, Long Island, New York.
How did you get started playing? Obviously,
they brought a piano into my house when I was about 4, I think, for my oldest sister, who was about 10 years older than me. And I just wouldn't leave it alone. By the time I turned 5, my mother said, "You're in here all the time. You should take lessons." And I said, "Okay." And about 3 years later, my mom would wander into the room where the piano was and say, "It's a beautiful day out today, Wade. Don't you think you want to go out and kick a ball around or something like a normal child? And it's not healthy in here all the time."
At least you didn't have an iPad or a phone.
Right, yes. I kind of knew what I wanted to do at a very early age, pretty much as soon as they brought that piano in. That's where it started. I think it probably was based on wanting attention to a certain degree. Billy Joel would say, why'd you start playing piano? Chicks. And I think that there's a certain amount of Pete Townsend said the same thing. It was about getting the attention of the opposite sex. But I would even take it even further, just say, I thought if I got good at this, people would pay attention to me. People might be nice to me,
Well, you did get very good at it, and there's certainly people paying attention.
Well, but I fell in love with music. I mean, I don't know how young I was. I heard Mussorgsky's Pictures at an exhibition, and I loved that piece. And I loved that. And I just really fell in love with music, and I just wanted to be as good as I could possibly get. And I still have that philosophy. Nothing's so good that can't be improved.
I think you told me you're still taking lessons. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I don't have a teacher right now. I had one up until a few years ago. He passed away at the ripe old age of 92.
Wow.
This is a whole Russian cat, from the Tchaikovsky world. I was supposed to feel bad. A guy had an amazing life, amazing career, dies at 92 in his sleep, and smoked and drank, and I don't think had any really serious health issues. Just at that point, his body just said, "Well, I think we're done."
Did you ever smoke?
Oh yeah,
sure. Wow.
Started when I was 14, quit on my 24th birthday. Then I started again.
Yeah.
Well, no, I had a swing band in LA, and I had hired this baritone horn player sub. When you have a big band, you're constantly looking for subs because they can always find better work. At the end of the night, we were chatting, and he was chain smoking Winston's and kept offering me one. I was like, no. And finally, I went, you know what? I'll have one. And I had 1 or 2 puffs.
That's all it takes.
And that's all it took. And it really drilled home the concept that once you're addicted to something, you're always addicted to something. And
right.
I ended up smoking for a couple of years, but fortunately, about 2 years into that, my friend Tommy Burns called me up and said, "How would you like to play Billy Joel on Broadway?" To which I said, "Well, duh. When am I ever going to be on Broadway?"
That's some serious incentive. What a great segue.
Exactly.
It
was, I could smoke cigarettes or sing on Broadway. So Yeah, so I gave it up.
So how did that happen? The whole
Basically a phone call, and Tommy called me up. He said, "How'd you like to play Billy Joel on Broadway?" And I said, "I'm in." He said, "Well, take your time, think about it." And I was like, "No, I'm up for it. I'll do it. You give it a day or two." He literally did not hear me say yes because I had turned him down for so many other things that he had called me about, including Enrique Iglesias. He asked me if I wanted to be keyboard player in that band, and that was when I had the swing band, and I was really enjoying myself.
Okay.
I was learning a lot. I was making a lot of money, writing charts, and then we were trying them out at gigs, and I was really enjoying that. So when he said, "Hey, I'd like to get you to play keyboards for this new guy, Enrique Iglesias. He's Julio Iglesias' son," and I knew right away. I'm like, that's probably going to be huge, but it would require that I move to the East Coast without any real guarantee of income.
Where were you at the time?
I was living in Redondo Beach at the time.
Okay.
I was on the West Coast.
But Broadway brought you back.
And Broadway brought me back.
I'm glad
So I mean, I immediately was like, well, I don't have to think about this. When am I ever going to get a chance to be on Broadway and actually doing something that I'm good at?
Yeah, right.
It's not like I'm going to be singing and dancing and
not much of a dancer at all.
Yeah, trying to learn some Broadway play, which is just not me at all. Nothing against all of you fine Broadway folk, but it was never my thing. I'm a piano player, singer, and I kind of come from a progressive rock 70s-ish Billy Joel, more Elton John. I grew up in Massapequa Park. Hicksville's right next door, and that's where Billy was from. So I kind of was, oh, you're like a little Billy Joel. I'm like, yeah, I really kind of want to be a Wade, So I kind of stayed away from his music for the most part. Not because I didn't like it or have a tremendous amount of respect for him, but because he was right next door. My LA days, I was really more known as the boogie guy, the maniacal boogie guy.
I've heard that you have the best left hand in the world, so and
just ask my right hand. There's got to be a better joke in there somewhere, but it's probably not. It's probably not PG.
So how did you get that left hand? I know practice, but
well, my mother gave it to me.
Another kind. Mother joke.
Yeah, sweetie, she is.
Did you concentrate on like the boogie woogie stuff?
Yeah, I don't know why I gravitated to that, but it started with Bach, Preludium and Fugues, and I loved Chopin and lots of the rolling left hand things like in Fantasy Impromptu and that ragtime kind of stride thing where you're playing bass and chords. I really gravitated to that left hand boogie kind of thing. I don't know why a white kid from Massapequa would gravitate to this barrel house boogie kind
because you were born a poor black child. That's why.
Of course. I keep forgetting. I think I was only about 5 or 6 years old, but I saw a cartoon on a show called The Mouse Factory. And what The Mouse Factory was just sort of a Disney program where they kind of mushed together a bunch of different little Disney cartoons and bits and pieces just to put a show together. And there was one cartoon that came on that was a bee being chased about by orchestral instruments with Bumble Boogie.
Bumble Boogie.
The music was Bumble Boogie by Jack Fina. But I don't know if it was the Freddie Martin Orchestra that's on that recording or if it's just Disney and then some studio piano player. It might have been Jack Fina and some other orchestra, who knows. But Jack Fina was a great boogie piano player. I heard that, and I remember hearing the music and just losing my mind. It wasn't really the cartoon, it was the music. And we had those crappy cassette recorders, state of the art at the time. Yeah, and I just waited for the show to repeat, and I was there. It came on, I think, once a week at a certain time, and I was there with the cassette recorder just in case it came back on again, and eventually, like 8 weeks later or something, it did, and I recorded it, and then proceeded to learn it by ear, which impressed my father. Not a lot impressed him, but he was like, wow, it was pretty good. And of course, as I played it, as time went on, it kind of mutated into its own weird, incorrect version that I had started to kind of turn it into. And then I met a guy who said, "Oh, I have the sheet music for that." And eventually he sent it to me, and so it kind of straightened out my understanding of that piece, and I learned how to play it properly. And that's kind of when I started with the boogie thing. I think, I know later on I heard of records by crippled Clarence Lofton, Speckle Red Perryman, Red Nelson, all these amazing barrelhouse piano players that you probably have never heard of, and that is understandable because they're pretty obscure. But there were these guys who could play so many different things at the same time, and they were remarkable, and I loved that style of piano playing. I liked anything that was technically, impressive,
challenging.
But the boogie thing also had a groove to it that was a lot of fun too. You could see something happen to the audience when it had had that kind of groove. But I definitely also had the whole progressive rock thing too. I was really drawn to Emerson, Lake and Palmer because it was really seriously difficult music. Keith was a monster keyboard player, and there was nobody like him, in that world. And for me, it was sort of like I loved classical. None of my friends did, and I saw it as a way of marrying my love for classical with music that my friends might actually listen to. And
that's a good point.
And it worked.
What other influences do you have as far? What's on your iPod? Let me ask you that.
You may be surprised to hear that I really don't listen to a lot. I'm always thinking about music, and I always have stuff going on in my head, and I generally don't put music on because I'm always sort of sorting something out in my head all the time. It's almost sort of borderline schizophrenic. And sometimes, I have things going on in my head, and I'm like, just try to plunk it out on the keyboard. I'm like, oh yeah, right, I didn't write that. Okay. And then other times where it's like, do you recognize this? No, maybe I do. Maybe it's mine. No,
I've been through periods of time where I don't want to listen to music because I have ideas in my head that I'm trying to exploit, and I don't want any exterior influence to change what I have going on or what I've started. So I can somewhat relate
sure.
to that.
No, I completely understand that. I think there's also the fact that if you do what we do for a living, make a lot of sound, that when you are by yourself, quiet sounds amazing.
It sure does. It sure
delightful.
does. Absolutely.
Do relatively big concerts, and I do relatively small private parties. It's all work, and it's all it's always unique experiences. Being a solo act where you can play a keyboard or a guitar and sing, where you can accompany yourself, you can find yourself in a lot of different types of social situations, and I find that kind of fascinating. You get sort of invited into people's world, and become part of it for a little while, and sometimes you end up with lifelong friends of lovely people in Upper Brookville that I've become very close to, and I leave a keyboard at their house, so whenever I go there, I
that's cool.
And they're always like, "Would you mind playing?" And they know I'm a ham. I'm just like, "Let's go."
So where can people go to book you for such a private event?
WadePreston.com. All my personal information is their personal information. Well, that's not really completely true. My number, my email. I'm easy to reach. Just my name.com.
On that site, are you talking about the Wade Preston Band? Because if we'd like to...
No. In fact, I have not updated the website since before the Wade Preston Band 2.0, as Joe Munley calls it.
I had the opportunity to sing a song. I was so thankful for that opportunity. You
that
guys
was
are
great.
phenomenal. You
did it in the original key too. You hit that G sharp. Yeah, that was awesome, man. I was very impressed.
Well, thank you.
Everybody was.
Thank you. But we want to hear about how this came together, what you guys got going on, what's coming up in the future.
Well, really it starts from like 1989, 1990. The mothership really wants your attention. I'm
going to turn this
You
off.
haven't brought up the right amount of uranium or something. So when I first went to L.A., I left New York because I couldn't seem to get anywhere. When my buddy... called me and said, "Hey, I need a roommate. I'm living in Marina Del Rey right now." I am there. and drove cross country. And within a relatively short amount of time, I picked up enough solo gigs, just me and a piano, to become a full-time musician. And I was only 22. I had toured with Chubby Checker. I started, I think, when I was like 19, and this was 1982. 20 maybe.
Funny you should say that. I have a cousin of the same name who toured with Chubby Checker around the same time.
Oh, I didn't know him. No, it was Sammy Merendino, who went on to become quite the session player in New York. But if you look at 1982, playing on Fridays Live, Solid Gold with Marilyn McCoo and Andy Gibb. That's a funny story. And American Bandstand, you'll see a very, very young Wade Preston.
Nice.
And Sammy Merendino on drums. Met a lot of girls. It was, 20 years.
Played all kinds of Palisades.
19 years old or 20 years old. I mean, that was glorious for me. When I came home, I thought, I had proven myself, and then within a very short amount of time, like a couple of days, my father said, "Well, now that the dream is over, you got to go get a job." And I was like, "I'm going to find another band gig." It didn't go well. Then,
oh wow!
In that time, my friend had said, "Hey, I need a roommate out here in California." And what I did was I would go to open mic nights, right, and play something like Too Much Monkey Business, just the fiery boogie piano thing,
Yep.
standing up when I play.
Grab some attention.
And it definitely got attention. And then invariably I'd get gigs out of it. And that's when I started playing like little places in Manhattan Beach and Hermosa Beach, down in San Diego. And little by little I kind of developed a following and really cut my teeth on the solo thing. And also what Billy calls the hour of power, but it's, if you play one rocker after another, after another, after another, you drive people into sort of a frenzy, and that was something I really enjoyed doing, because we would wreck bar rooms, and I'd have a great time, and the managers would be like, "Yeah, we're making a lot of money, but you're doing a lot of damage too." "Oh, sorry, not really sorry." I didn't like breaking the energy, the vibe. I think I felt safer on stage, and as soon as I got off, then everybody wanted to talk, and then I couldn't get out of these circular drunken conversations. And once in a great while, I'd be like, I really need to take a break so I can get something to eat or use the restroom or something like that. And then the moment I'd get off the stage, people would accost me, and then I couldn't get away, and then it was time to get back up and play.